Hello everybody, welcome to the fourth class of IELTS Speed Up. Okay, following the principles of our classes, first we will go through the outline of the lecture. Okay, today we'll focus on listening part 4 and we'll go through the part 4 overview. We will go through sample question types that you will have in IELTS listening part 4. And of course, tips and strategies that will be helpful for these question types. And after this, we'll practice together and of course, I will try to explain the answers. And the last technique that is very important to boost your listening skills, keyword technique. Okay, let's go through part 4 overview. Okay, as you know, starting from part 3, all the topics in IELTS listening will be set on academic context. So in part 4, you will have a monologue on academic topic. It's usually part of a lecture where professor is delivering certain information to the audience or students. Okay, so common question types that you may have in listening part 4 are note, sentence, and summary completion. Okay, in comparison with first, second, and third parts in listening, part 4 is a little bit more sophisticated. Not that difficult though. Okay, you need minimum 6 or 7 correct answers in this part. Moving to the tips and strategies for the first question types that you may have in part 4, not completion. Okay, first of all, you should read all the information carefully, analyze and understand it. And remember, you should listen for the gist. You should understand what is a speaker talking about. And of course, take a moment to understand the rest of the note form that is given to you, because you should be always keeping eye on the next question, because sometimes students may skip the answer. So, okay, think about synonyms, which is very important thing in IELTS listening. You should remember that in IELTS, they will always try to trick you and paraphrase all the sentences that are given in your booklet. Okay, so use the information that is given to you in your booklet to predict the answer, or at least word type that you should write in the gap. So whether it's verb, adjective, noun, or adverb, it will help you a lot. Okay, listen carefully and fill the gaps with information that is required from you. And of course, the last tip that is like strange, but still you should guess if you skip the answer, because in IELTS listening you will be rewarded 1 point for each correct answer. It is better to try instead of not doing anything. Let's move to the practice. As you can see, we have note completion here. First, we should look at instructions you are given. Okay, write 1 word only. So we have limits here. Let's look at the title, The Sleepy Lizard. So this is the lecture, or let's say speech about animal called sleepy lizard. Now we should analyze the information that is given to us in order to understand the context. Okay, they are common in Western and South Australia, fine. They are brown but recognizable by their blue. So, okay, you should write in noun here. This is the first thing. And of course, you can think logically. They are brown, so color of this animal is brown but recognizable by their blue. So certain part of their body can be blue, so you can differentiate, recognize them or distinguish them. Okay, next, they are relatively large, fine. Their diet consists mainly of. Here we need noun again. Okay, their diet consists mainly. First, when you're analyzing the booklet, you should always focus on the words that may block or inhibit your understanding. So the word diet is a range of food eaten by this animal, not the diet you guys sometimes understand. Okay, their main predators are large birds and, so this is noun. And the word that you may not understand here, predator. So these are the animals that eat other animals, okay? You should understand that this sleepy lizard can be killed or eaten by large birds and something, probably another type of animals. Listen carefully.
Last week we started looking at reptiles, including crocodiles and snakes. Today, I'd like us to have a look at another reptile, the lizard, and in particular, at some studies that have been done on a particular type of lizard whose Latin name is Tiliqua rugosa. This is commonly known as the sleepy lizard because it's quite slow in its movements and spends quite a lot of its time dozing under rocks or lying in the sun. I'll start with a general description. Sleepy lizards live in Western and South Australia, where they're quite common. Unlike European lizards, which are mostly small, green and fast-moving, sleepy lizards are brown, but what's particularly distinctive about them is the colour of their tongue, which is dark blue.
Okay, as you heard, speaker mentioned that they are brown, but their distinguishing feature is dark blue tongue. Okay, so let's move to the next question.
In contrast with the lining of their mouth, which is bright pink, and their
So here, speaker mentioned another color, pink. However, this is the color of their mouth, so do not get confused.
much bigger than most European lizards. They have quite a varied diet, including insects and even small animals, but they mostly eat plants.
So, speaker mentions they have quite wide diets, including insects and other animals, but mostly they eat plants. Okay, here we have word mainly, which is synonym for the word mostly. Okay, let's continue.
Of varying kinds. Even though they're quite large and powerful, with strong jaws that can crush beetles and snail shells, they still have quite a few predators. Large birds like cassowaries were one of the main ones in the past, but nowadays they're more likely to be caught and killed by snakes.
So they can be caught and killed by snakes. Okay. Let's move to the next part of the note that we have. Okay, one study found that lizards can use something, so you need noun here, to help them navigate. So navigate means to find desired location, to find place they want to reach. Okay, next, observations shows that these lizards keep the same something, so you need noun again, so they have all the time same something. Okay, I think everything is clear. Let's listen.
One study carried out by Michael Freak at Flinders University investigated the methods of navigation of these lizards.
Here.
Though they move slowly, they can travel quite long distances. And he found that even if they were taken some distance away from their home territory, they could usually find their way back home as long as they could see the sky.
So the answer is sky, because speaker mentions that lizards can travel long distances, and even though they are taken away from their home area, they can find way back home as long as they see the sky. Okay, so
They didn't need any other landmarks on the ground. Observations of these lizards in the wild have also revealed that their mating habits are quite unusual. Unlike most animals, it seems that they're relatively monogamous, returning to the same partner year after year.
So, speaker mentions that these animals are monogamous and they have the same partner for several years, returning to the same partner year after year. So, the answer is partner. So, let's move to the next part here. We have possible reasons to improve the survival of their young, but little something. So we have noun has been noted between parents and children. So you should listen for information where speaker mentions what they don't have between parents and children. Okay, to provide something for female lizards. So we need noun here again. So what they provide for female, maybe food, maybe home, or something else. So let's listen.
Male also stay together for a long time, both before and after the birth of their young.
Okay.
It's quite interesting to think about the possible reasons for this. It could be that it's to do with protecting their young. You'd expect them to have a much better chance of survival if they have both parents around. But in fact, observers have noted that once the babies have hatched out of their eggs, they have hardly any contact with their parents.
So, speaker mentions that once babies hatch out their eggs, they have hardly any contact. So, they don't have a lot of contact with their parents. Okay?
So there's not really any evidence to support that idea. Another suggestion is based on the observation that male lizards in monogamous relationships tend to be bigger and stronger than other males. So maybe the male lizards stay around so they can give the female lizards protection from other males.
So, speaker mentioned that males stay around female lizards to give them protection. So, give, provide, this is the synonym, and the answer is protection. Okay? So, let's move to the last part of note completion. Okay, a study was carried out using GPS systems attached to the, okay, here you have to write noun of the lizards. We have word attached here. Attached means connected. So logically, GPS systems have been connected or attached to certain part of their body. So it can be their legs, heads, we'll see. Okay, this provided information. So this, connecting the GPS gave them a chance to find out location of the lizards and even the number of something taken. So you need noun here as well. And the last one, it appears that the lizards were trying to avoid one another. Okay, this may be in order to reduce chances of something. So we need noun here as well. So there is a word reduce, means minimize or decrease chances of something. So let's listen.
Finally, I'd like to mention another study that involved collecting data by tracking the lizards. I was actually involved in this myself. So we caught some lizards in the wild and we developed a tiny GPS system that would allow us to track them, and we fixed this onto their tails.
So the answer is tails. Okay, instead of the word attached, they use the word fixed. Okay, let's continue.
Then we set the lizards free again, and we were able to track them for 12 days and gather data, not just about their location, but even about how many steps they took during this period.
So the answer is steps. So speaker didn't say number of steps, but paraphrased it, saying how many steps they have taken. Okay, and the last question.
One surprising thing we discovered from this is that there were far fewer meetings between lizards than we expected. It seems that they were actually trying to avoid one another. So why would that be? Well, again, we have no clear evidence, but one hypothesis is that male lizards can cause quite serious injuries to one another. So maybe this avoidance is a way of preventing this.
So the answer here is injuries. And speaker mentioned that if two male lizards meet each other, they may cause serious injuries, and avoidance, between these lizards may be the main reason of preventing this situation. Okay, in the following slides, you can go through the script of the audio and check out the answers. You can pause the video and go through the answers. They are highlighted and underlined. Okay, and here in these questions, you don't have keyword table. This is going to be your home assignment. Make sure that at home you compare all the words at the booklet and script and make keyword table. So next question type is sentence completion. And tip number 1, you should keep in mind that sentence you have in your booklet will be paraphrased in the IELTS listening audio. And of course, you should be listening for the context, for the gist, and trying to understand the context. Okay, next. You can normally guess the word type that you should write in the gap. So this is very important to predict whether you should write in noun, verb, adjective, or adverb. Next. Complete the sentences with exact words, not some synonyms or paraphrases, because they will not be considered as correct. Okay? Next, you should pay close attention to the words that come right before the gap and after it, because these words are clues that will help you to find out what word you need in the gap. Okay, next. Sometimes between questions in part 4 there is very short break, and by mistake IELTS candidates usually spend this time on checking the answers to previous questions. Never do so. You should go ahead and analyze next questions. Okay, next. Very important thing and very big mistake. Sometimes students held up on one question. You should remember that audio never stops. It goes and goes on. You should do the same. Never spend too much time on one question. Okay? Finally, make sure that you know all the steps you will go through in each question type, because each question type has its own methods and strategies in IELTS. You should be familiar with that all. Okay, next practice is going to be on sentence completion. Okay, let's look at instructions. One word only. This is the limit we have. Okay, If you look at a site, so at this place, from a maybe distance or from some other place, you reduce visitor pressure. So here we need noun. Okay, next. To camp on a site may be disrespectful to people from that. Okay, again, we have to write noun here. Next, undiscovered material might be damaged by visitors or animals, so you have to write noun here as well. So you should avoid something or tracing rock art as it is so fragile. Okay, in general, your aim is to leave the site safe and secure, or maybe untouched or undamaged. Okay, let's listen.
Now, before I invite you to join in a discussion in this second part of the seminar, I'd like to make some very important points about our fieldwork, and in fact any field trip to look at rock art. We're going to a number of sites, and we won't always be together. The single largest problem faced by people who manage the sites is, yes, I'm sure you've guessed, damage caused by visitors, even though it's usually unintentional. Whenever you do go to a site, don't forget you can learn many things from observing at a distance instead of walking all over it. This can really help to reduce visitor pressure.
So, as speaker mentioned, you can learn a lot of things from observing at a distance, as we predicted before. So, the answer is distance. Okay, let's continue.
People often say, well, there's only two of us, and just this one time. But maybe thousands of people are saying the same thing. And then, some basic rules to guide you. We'll have our own camp near a village, but remember never to camp on a site if you go on your own. It may be disrespectful to the people of that culture.
So, the answer is culture. This one was quite straightforward, I guess.
And certainly don't make fires, however romantic it may seem. It's really dangerous in dry areas, and you can easily burn priceless undiscovered material by doing so.
So the answer is fires, because speaker mentioned never make fires because this is dangerous in dry area and can burn priceless undiscovered material. Okay?
So, how are we going to enjoy the rock art on our field trip? By looking at it, drawing it, and photographing it. Never by touching it or even tracing it.
As speaker mentioned, you can take photos of rock art, look at it, but never touch it or trace it. So the answer is touching. Okay, so next is?
Rock art is fragile and precious. Remember that climbing on rocks and in caves can destroy in a moment what has lasted for centuries. So no heroics in Namibia, please. Try to be extra careful and help others to be too. Oh, and lastly, please don't even move rocks or branches to take photographs. You should leave the site intact.
So, as speaker mentioned, you should leave site intact. Okay, in the following slides, you can check answers from the script. Okay, and again, I remind you, today we don't have keyword table. This is going to be your home assignment. Okay, let's move to the next question type, which is summary completion. First, what is summary? This is squeezed down text. So, in other words, this is smaller version of big text that includes only main ideas, key points. Okay, let's look at the tip number 1. This question type tests your ability to use synonyms and paraphrase efficiently. As I said before, you should catch main ideas only. Actually, this is very important or valuable skill for students that want to study at university. Okay, next, read the text before listening and try to get a good idea of the context, because again, it will be paraphrased and you should be getting the point of these sentences. Next tip is you can use your knowledge of grammar to predict word type, which will help you a lot. Okay? This question type can give you options to fill gaps. So you will be given table where you will be given options of words and you should choose them. So in this case, you should be cautious in terms of synonyms and paraphrases. Okay? Read all of the question instructions carefully and check if there is word limit, because sometimes you may catch word or phrase correctly, but you're not able to write it. So be careful. And next, read the summary you're given to get a general idea about what it is about. So again, you should have clear image of the context. Okay? Next tip is use this information to consider the context and predict what you are going to hear. Most of the time, it is not that difficult. Okay? Think about synonyms and paraphrases. This is very important part of IELTS listening. You should never forget about potential words that can come in the audio. Okay? Next, predict possible answers. This is very important again. And of course, fill in the answers as you listen. So next question type we'll practice together is summary completion. First, let's pay attention to the word limits we have. Okay, it says one word only. Now we'll analyze the text that is given to us, looking for Asian honey bees. Birds called rainbow bee eaters eat only something. So this is going to be noun. And as we had in the previous practices, it can be certain type of animal, species, or plants, or something else. And cough up small bits of skeleton and other products in a pallet. Okay? Researchers go to the locations the bee eaters like to use for something. So this is going to be noun as well. And this one, they collect the pellets and take them to they take them somewhere. So this is going to be noun, but probably certain place or location for analysis. So where usually scientists analyze certain, let's say, items. Of course, in labs, but let's see.
How will you know if Asian bees have entered Australia?
We're looking at the diet of the bird called the rainbow bee eater. The bee eater doesn't care what it eats as long as they're insects.
So, speaker mentioned they are going to talk about the diet of a bird called rainbow bee eaters and mentioned they don't care what they eat as long as it's insects. Okay? So, let's continue.
But the interesting thing about this bird is that we are able to analyse exactly what it eats, and that's really helpful if we're looking for introduced insects.
How come?
Because insects have their skeletons outside their bodies, so the bee eaters digest the meat from the inside. Then they bring up all the indigestible bits of skeleton, and of course the wings, in a pellet, a small ball of waste material which they cough up.
That sounds a bit unpleasant. So how do you go about it?
In the field, we track down the bee-eaters and find their favourite feeding spots, you know, the places where the birds usually feed.
So the answer is for feeding. As speaker mentioned, they track them down and find their favorite place for feeding. Okay?
It's here that we can find the pellets. We collect them up and take them back to the laboratory to examine the content.
So the answer is laboratory. Okay? So let's move to the next part of summary completion. Okay? Here, something is used to soften them. Okay? And the researchers look for the something of Asian bees in the pellets. So we should write noun in both gaps. However, you can logically predict that to soften, they may use certain material or liquid, okay? And look for something, searching something of Asian bees. And the next one is the benefit of this research is that the result is more something. So here you have to write adjective, okay? Then searching for live Asian bees, okay? Let's listen.
Now, how do you do that?
The pellets are really hard, especially if they've been out in the sun for a few days. So, first of all, we treat them by adding water to moisten them and make them softer.
So, as speaker mentioned, they use water to moisten them and make them softer. So, the answer is water. Okay?
Then we pull them apart under the microscope. Everything's all scrunched up, but we're looking for wings, so
speaker mentioned that they are looking for wings. Okay?
Pull them all out and straighten them. Then we identify them to see if we can find any Asian bee wings.
And how many have you found?
So far, our research shows that Asian bees have not entered Australia in any number. It's a good result and much more reliable than trying to find live ones,
So, speaker mentions that this is good result and much more reliable. Okay? Finally, your homework is going to be completing 1 to 40 tests, part 4 only, using 40 listening practice tests book published by Thompson School. And remember, you should check your answers and prepare a keyword table for each test. And of course, listen again, practice, work on your mistakes and weak points. And of course, translate and learn all the vocabulary from the script. Okay? You should be always working on your vocabulary and trying to enrich it. This is the end of listening lesson 4, and throughout these 4 classes you have learned 15 different question types, and now you're familiar with corresponding tips and strategies for each question type. You should keep in mind, if you have any difficulties with certain question type, you can refer to the previous videos and watch them again and again. So you should start feeling yourself comfortable with these question types. This 40 listening practice tests book is actually designed for students who want to improve or boost their listening skills based on different question types. Never stop practicing. Hope you've enjoyed these listening classes. See you next time.